Hello and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be talking about casual sex and the empathic or highly sensitive individual. And I'm going to be sharing a couple stories I guess today, one of which features in my book, How to Open the Heart. And in my book I have, a couple hundred pages to develop a greater context within which this story occurs. In today's video, I'm kind of just gonna skip a lot of the details, skip a lot of the context, and just try to share what relates from the story to this topic. And to get right into it, this story, the couple stories that I'm gonna share happened about, 8 or 9 years ago. And it was at a point in my life where I was diving deep into doing emotional work, inner work, and kind of tearing open the sensitivity and empathic feeling sense that I had somewhat closed down throughout my life. And during this season of my life, I met a young woman who I was very, very attracted to, and we started hanging out. And the more we hung out, the more agonizingly attracted I was to her. And yet the whole time there was this part of me that always felt like she didn't like me. There was kind of some suppressed feelings or coldness or closeness in her that made my heart or my vulnerability or my inner child feel perpetually insecure and afraid. And we would have hour-long conversations about music or philosophy or whatever. And although on a personality level, it was clear that we were clicking and getting along, there was this kind of subconscious or emotional level where, like I said, I perpetually felt unliked. And at some point, so I felt this crazy attraction on a personal and physical level. And then there was this deeper sense of insecurity or unsafety that I felt. And I want to make it very clear that this was an awesome person. She was a super awesome person. And I even brought this all up and I shared it, at the time as honestly as I knew how. I shared, I feel this agonizing attraction to you. And I haven't been able to talk about it because I also feel afraid of a part of you that feels like it's closed off and cold towards me. And this is really confusing. And we ended up talking about it. And like I said, this was a super good person. She was so open to talking about it and so interested in it was a part of her that closed part of her that felt unsafe to my vulnerability. She had some awareness of that and was really curious and open-minded and wanting to explore it. And just such a fabulous person to be, getting to know and to be honest with, because she was so receptive. We ended up spending the night together after we had that conversation. And the really noteworthy thing for the purpose of this video was that after that experience of being intimate together, and we talked about it beforehand, how we didn't really see each other as potential partners, but we were both single, we were both attracted to each other, and so we decided that we would sleep together and do so in a mature, kind, respectful way. And on the surface of it, it was respectful and positive, and but for a week afterwards, I don't know if it was actually a week, but I got quite sick afterwards. I had a fever. I remember there was days where I was living in a cabin in the woods at the time, and I was just laid out by myself, with a fever. I was sweating, and all I could do, because I was so weak, was use the bathroom, drink water, and pass in and out of like hallucinatory semi-consciousness. It was terrible. It was like, it was something that I've never experienced. And I had at the time, and I tell this story in much greater detail in my book, I had an empathic mentor who is like a clairvoyant basically in my life at the time. And I thought that I had just caught an illness, and he was insistent that no, you took on energy from that person when you slept with them. That unresolved emotional or energetic conflict in them that made your vulnerability feel scared, when you slept with them, you opened up to that and you absorbed it. I went to the doctor, and it was true that I wasn't sick with anything. I didn't catch any kind of illness. And so, I was led to believe that was true, that I had just empathically taken on something from that experience. Now, in retrospect, and I say this because I want to fully honor the person that I was with, because they were an outstanding, high caliber of person, to be so open to honest dialogue and so humble to talk about their own stuff. And it was such a beautiful thing to have that experience of honesty with them and have it be received. I feel like my understanding of these dynamics is always evolving, but my present understanding is that what happened in that context of sleeping with someone who had some very natural and normal unresolved emotional stuff going on, it's like I had been opening up my sensitivity and my empathic sense, and what that means is being empathic, which means my ability to feel other people's feelings, like literally, not to kind of cognitively or imaginatively sympathize, but actually to feel the emotion going on inside somebody else within me. Because I'd been kind of opening that up within me, it's like there was this raw vulnerability that was open in that experience. And because she was closed, because of her, where she was at in her emotional history and what had gone on her past or whatever, this vulnerable part of me, all it felt was like the conflict going on in them. And it felt like, oh my God, they don't like me. Oh my God, this is about me. I think that because of my wounds or trauma or whatever you want to call it, the conflict, the energetic and emotional conflict in them, a part of me that just really was scarred and needed nurturance, it felt that, and I was intimate with it in a way that was completely confusing and overwhelming to that rawness that was open in me. And so I say that because I feel like it's a more nuanced understanding of the dynamics at play than just saying, oh, somebody had toxic energy and I got toxified by it. It's not actually true, because in this story that I'm relating, I was with an extraordinarily awesome person, and they had stuff going on in them that, because I had this rawness, this pure vulnerability that was open in me, and I hadn't really learned how to have boundaries with that yet or how to take care of it, it was just confusing. And if I had had a higher level of emotional intelligence or empathic literacy and mastery, then when my vulnerability felt the conflict that was going on in her, I might have been able to say, they have conflict going on. We should just talk about this. It's not about you. This is stuff, this is big stuff, and it's stuff that everybody has, and it's stuff that you have. And instead, my vulnerability felt their emotional stuff, and it just internalized it, and it overwhelmed me, and it made me ill. And about a few months after that experience, I had another similar interaction where, again, a friend of mine, where there was a strong, agonizing mutual attraction. We had a conversation one night about, how we were feeling towards each other. We ended up spending the night together. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and my body was like filled with this extraordinary anguish. It was like filled with this seething guilt and anxiety and pain. And it was unlike it's not it's hard to like clearly articulate this, but I just knew these weren't my feelings. Like the feelings felt foreign to me. They didn't have the emotional signature of like Miles's emotions and energy. It's hard to, that's the best that I can articulate it. But my understanding is that us sleeping together, me and my friend, it brought up guilt and anxiety and pain for her. And she was like thrashing in that. And I was just absorbing it like a sponge. And again, if I, at the time, had a little bit more emotional intelligence or proficiency, I might have just been able to acknowledge, oh, this is what's going on in her. Let's talk about it. Let's do something with this energy. So it's not just like festering in between us and running amok unconsciously. But I didn't at the time. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't understand clearly the distinction between my own feelings and other people's feelings. And I didn't understand my own vulnerability and what it required in order to feel safe in a sexual or intimate dynamic. And it's cool in retrospect to make this video and to understand that, and to be able to say like, oh, there was nothing wrong with those people. It was all me and my vulnerability and me not knowing how to take care of it. And that feels like a really wonderful place to have arrived in my own understanding of these experiences. But, for a few years, that was like just my common experience when I was sexual with somebody, was that it would be somewhat disastrous because I would like, on the surface of it, or from a certain vantage point, it's like I would just soak up the energy and emotion of the other person. If they had conflict going on, I wouldn't really know what to do with that. So I would just feel like it was all about me. There was something wrong with me. The things that a child would think about themselves, essentially. It's like my inner child, because I hadn't learned how to take care of that part of me and grow it up. As a child would, it would feel conflict going around in its environment and internalize it and feel like it was, oh, they don't like me. Oh, I'm a bad person. Oh, so on and so forth. To kind of like zoom out from my own experience and comment on this more broadly, kind of just the issue or the subject of the empathic or highly sensitive individual having casual sex and how it's often not just casual. I have a wonderful friend who passed away named Mike Keelan, and he was twice my age, and we would talk about this type of stuff. And one day he told me, Miles, there's no such thing as just sex, because there's so much, it's like there's so many things that are interconnected with it. And particularly if you are more sensitive, more empathic, which just means that your vulnerability or your heart or your emotional body are like more open and more permeable to what's going on around you. Sometimes, depending on where you're at, just having casual sex in general is not a great idea, because, if you have a certain kind of trauma or vulnerability going on in you, you might be developmentally at a place where in order for your vulnerability to be truly taken care of, it requires a kind of stability, trust, safety, and patience that are, generally the landscape of a committed monogamous relationship. And that's a beautiful thing. It's like sometimes, I mean, it just sounds objectively good, right? Like creating this sanctuary where one's vulnerability and soul and heart and empathy can really be honored and understood and patiently met, and that a certain kind of nakedness and intimacy are appropriate, and a certain kind of intimacy that it's not generally appropriate to open up with random individuals. You know? That's it's beautiful to honestly acknowledge where we're at on our journey, and to honestly acknowledge when it's actually in truth to find or create a sanctuary where intimacy and sexual intimacy are explored, or and not to look at casual sex as something that's bad or less than or morally wrong, but it's just different. And if you're in a place where it doesn't make sense because what you desire, yearn for, or even require is something that's far more stable and safe, or like I said, like a sanctuary, then that's beautiful and that's something to celebrate. It's like, wow, that's such a profound thing to know about yourself, to choose for yourself, to give yourself. And at other points for other people or at other developmental places in an individual's journey, having casual sex or casual, a different type of sexual connection, but knowing what you need in order for that to feel healthy. For me personally, and this changes with my evolution as a person, one thing that feels pretty solid that I need in order to feel comfortable being sexual with somebody is, well, two things maybe. There's probably actually many of them, but I'm gonna list two that relate to this subject. One is the capacity and desire for like clear, honest communication and humility, so that feelings are just like excitedly talked about and embraced. And if something needs to pause, that can happen. So yeah, like excellent communication, humility, honesty. And another like super important thing that just feels so basic is that I have to feel like someone likes me in a very like intuitive or instinctive, wholesome and simple way. Some innocent, vulnerable part of me just needs to feel like, oh, they're nice, they like me, they're warm, they're kind, they care about me. That feels like such a basic thing that's so fundamental. And maybe it's so obvious, it's like comical that I'm even saying it, but probably not, because we do all sorts of very weird things when we're driven by sex. And and I think that's what makes it so much fun and so rich and interesting to talk about and explore. Because you can take the most self-aware or awakened individual and bring in sex, and all of a sudden you bring an individual down to their knees. Sometimes, often it's just that conflict between the desire for sexual connection and moving towards that, even when it's emotionally harmful. It's just such a universal and fascinating conflict. My hope with this video is just to share my own experience as someone who is empathic, highly sensitive, and for whom casual sex has been, in some instances, a challenging experience, to say the least. But in all cases, like a wonderful learning experience. I'm grateful for all of my experiences. And the ones that I relayed in this video were actually like with awesome people, and they were really positive. They were just part of me coming to understand my own emotional nuances, you know, the wounds in me, the vulnerability in me, just learning how to hold that, how to understand what's other people's energy, what's my energy. Man, it is one hell of a rabbit hole, and I really feel like I've just touched on it, which is how it feels at the end of all these videos. But if you are curious to learn more, my book, How to Open the Heart, is not exclusively or specifically by any means about this subject, but it does go into it for sure, and it goes into it in a big context, or within a big context of one big, long, personal, very revealing story. If you're interested, there's a link to the book in the description of the video. If you like the video, you can click the like button, you can comment on it, you can subscribe to it, or you can just enjoy the feeling that you get when you like something. And until next time, I hope that you have a wonderful day.